and Bendy.
Hello and welcome to Waldy and Bendy's Adventures in Art, the podcast they could not stop, though they did have a jolly good go at it, and we've been off air for a couple of years now. But we are back. In the Bible, the prodigal son returns, having led a louche life and wasted his inheritance. But on this podcast, you get two prodigal sons. I'm Waldemar art critic of the Sunday Times, and my behaviour in our absence has been exemplary. But Bendy, alias Bendor Grosvenor, art dealer and baron of the borders, he's something of a market leader when it comes to looseness and wasting your inheritance. So, Bendy, tell us, what naughty things have you been up to?
Oh, none at all, Weld. I'm so good Samaritan. Also, I'm a former art dealer, so I'm not tainted anymore by filthy lucre. So I'm so saintly. You're going to art history hell. I'm going straight up to art history heaven.
Well, of course, the other thing you are is a farmer, a world-class farmer. That's why they call you the Baron of the Borders. I mean, you rule it up there in agricultural Scotland. But we talked about the farm a little bit on the first podcast when you came back, but I gather that events have turned out not too well for you.
Yes, it's been a bad farming month. Very sad. One of our donkeys, Jose, unfortunately had to be put down just a few days ago. Which we're all devastated by up here.
Hang on. Your donkey's been put down. We mentioned the donkey on the first podcast. The donkey's featured prominently in our programmes.
I know two beautiful donkeys, Jose, and he was so sweet, and he featured in many of our discussions. He was 20 and he had suddenly a twisted gut, which you can't do anything about. And the tragic and beautiful thing about donkeys, Weld, is that they're bred to be stoic. So you can't really tell if they're unwell until it's too late. And so we miss him very much. And even more sadly, because donkeys are such faithful friends, his pal Casper, you can't leave him in a field alone. So he's had to go back to the donkey sanctuary. So we're now no donkeys here at all. But we're hoping he's going to pal up with some new friends. And then we'll have a return of Casper and maybe 2 or 3 new chums.
My God, I mean, that just shows you how life is capricious, isn't it? I mean, here we are talking one day about your donkeys, the next day one of them's passed away. That's really genuinely sad, I think. And of course, you haven't had great news either in your barley fields, have you? I gather there's been some trouble there too.
Yes, as we discussed last week, our barley didn't make the high standard to go into whiskey. Normally, if you make that high standard, you can sell your crop for a good price. We failed because there's been a drought up here. And so we had to sell it at a loss for cattle feed, basically. So we're licking our farming wounds, Weld. You townies, you don't understand how tough it is.
God, cattle feed from your barley, and that genuinely is tragic. Fortunately, we can supply a little balm to you for that awful event here, because later on in the programme we're going to be doing something inspired by your barley story, which is we're going to be looking at the 5 best drinking pictures in art. I mean, it's one of our fabulous lists that we have. So at least those drinking pictures may cheer us up a bit, and hopefully cheer you up too. So that's coming up. But first of all, this podcast is devoted to events in the art world, and sometimes those events can be really, really shocking. It's shocking news from the art world. So, Bendy, yes, shocking news from the art world. And the really shocking news is that the art world seems to be in shock. I mean, basically, it's not making as much money as it used to, is it? At least that's what I've been hearing at my end of the art market, which is the hip, the go-ahead, the youthful end of the contemporary art market. But at your end, the old fogey end, is that true as well, Bendy? Are things going badly?
Well, the great thing about the old master end of the market is it just plods along. It always has done. So you never have the peak and you don't really have the trough, although maybe I'm speaking too soon. But so far, the old master sales have been sort of chugging away, as they always do. In fact, I think the taste for old pictures might be coming back a bit. But I thought, well, the big news in the art market actually was that Christie's have announced they've closed their digital art sales department. So that's all the NFTs. Do you remember that moment of Beeple mania that we covered back on the podcast a few years ago? Christie's have now decided not bothering with that anymore.
Yeah, well, that doesn't surprise me. I mean, they were a waste of time from the beginning, weren't they, NFTs? I mean, we predicted their end long before the end happened. So, I mean, of course, NFTs are all about selling nothing for loads of money. So I'm surprised they lasted as long as they did.
I'm proud we were so ahead of the curve on that, actually.
Yes.
Do you remember we tried to go through the sort of NFT museum for all the Beeples that made all that money, tens of millions of dollars, and we got stuck in the toilets.
Yeah.
It was a disaster, but even then you could see it was hopeless. And
Yeah.
I'm quite glad that the art market has kind of escaped being hitched to that sort of digital bandwagon.
I mean, you said that your old master sales are sort of holding up. Contemporary art is definitely moaning and groaning all the time about losing sales. So people are saying that art fairs are dropping in usefulness and value. Certainly prices have by and large gone down. And there's an article in the art newspaper about it saying that, for example, gold has gone up 20% this year. Imagine 20%. But art values, contemporary art values have gone down. Shares have gone up. The dreaded Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies, they've all gone up. And there's a long exploration of why that might be. And one of the reasons seems to be that, so the great collectors of art, of contemporary art, were all the baby boomers and the millennials. So people who made loads of money in the 80s and 90s, spent it all on trophy art.
People like you.
Yeah, people like you, Bendy, exactly that. And then their children are the ones who are now coming into the money, right? So they are the inheritors of these vast fortunes. And they just seem to be a lot less interested in trophy art. I mean, there's some interesting reasons for that. One of which is that they spend their whole time on the internet, and all they're really interested in is things that sort of play well on the World Wide Web. So, not NFTs in this case, but things that reproduce well, things that appear on the internet. And the other thing is that they're sort of interested in not spending their money on art so much. I mean, like some people, I know loads of people who've given up having a car in London. I don't know about you. So they've given up having a car because it costs money and they're conscious of the ecological impact. Well, the new generation, the next gen, as I believe they're known, they too don't believe in hoarding and keeping things. So they're spending less money on art as well. So everybody's complaining. The art market, contemporary art market, is moaning that the prices have gone down and things are not looking good.
Well, we must do our best to encourage people to keep buying art, because what happens if the world stops buying art? I'll wave the flag for old master pictures. We can plug them, and you can do the modern and contemporary end.
Yes, exactly. Old fogies versus new things. But of course, you have this vast experience of all that because, you have a genuine old master dealer pedigree. You worked for the great Philip Mould, didn't you, for several years, and that art researcher and connoisseur Fiona Bruce, who went on to do that Fake or Fortune program, which you used to be involved in, I remember. So you do know about the art market from the inside. I'm only an observer of it from the distance. So I trust your opinions more than I trust my own. But it does seem to be as if, generally speaking, that time when art was a way of piling up loads of cash, buying up lots of things and reselling them at a vast fortune, that does seem to be ebbing away if it hasn't actually passed yet.
Yeah, well, the modern contemporary art market lived for too long by speculation and the idea that the price might go up, whereas that never affected the old master market, so it was always cheap. And to be honest, Wald, although I've just said we should encourage people to buy art, art is a terrible investment. Not because it doesn't hold its value, it does, and it can go up, but it's very illiquid, and the transaction costs are very high. So you've always got to make, between 20 and 30% in a year if you want to buy and sell the art, in order to not lose any money. So don't buy art as a speculation, just buy it because you love it.
That's what I've always done, which is why everything that I own is worth nothing. I've got such bad taste that none of it seems to have increased massively in price. Oh, well, never mind. Fortunately, we have got some fantastic art to talk about, which even if we don't necessarily own it, we can look at it and enjoy it. And that's coming up because we are seeing today the return of one of the favourite bits of the Waldy and Bendy podcast, which is, of course, the Waldy and Bendy Awards.
The Waldy and Bendy Awards.
Yes, the Waldy and Bendy Awards. God, I've missed them. You forget the Oscars, forget the Turner Prize, forget the Booker Prize, forget all these things. The only thing that really counts amongst art lovers is the Waldy and Bendy Awards. And as I said before, in honour of you, Bendy, and your failed crop of barley and all those bottles of whiskey that we're going to miss because of the failed crop, we're going to do a Waldy and Bendy Awards special about drinking in art. It's one of the most popular subjects in art, really. It's popped up a lot. I'm not quite sure exactly how we're going to do this, and because you're a man who knows much more about drinking than I do, perhaps you can tell us how you're going to lead us through this adventure.
I, d- I have to confess, Val, that I don't drink.
What?
So I don't know anything about drinking.
At all?
Well,
You don't
I
drink
used
at
to.
all?
No, I'm teetotal.
You're the
Not
Donald Trump of the art world. You don't drink at all.
Well, I tried to tell you at the beginning I'm so clean living. I promise you it's not out of choice. I just don't have the constitution for it. So I have to steer clear of even the lightest little bit of booze. Fitting in with that narrative, why don't we start with the cheeriest of our 5 shortlist here? Why don't you start us off with a Manet?
I think this is amongst the most famous of all drinking pictures, and it's Manet's at the bar Folie Bergère, which hangs in the Courtauld Gallery in London. Fabulously famous picture, so interesting. And it shows a barmaid right in the centre of the picture, standing at a bar. Behind her there's a big mirror, and she's at the Folie Bergère, which was this celebrated nightclub that opened in Paris at the end of the 19th century, and all the artists went there, and so did all the rich people. And it was famous for being a bit of a louche place. There were prostitutes there, there was lots of drinking, and it had a reputation as the place where adventurous older guys would go and try and pick up women, etc. So it was a naughty place. And what happens in this picture is that the barmaid is standing at the bar, and in the reflection behind, you can see her again talking to an older client, it looks like. But the key thing is that arranged at the front, so right at the front of the picture, is a beautiful set of drinking things. So there's a bottle of champagne, there's a couple of bottles of champagne, there's some wine, there's what I think is a bottle of peppermint liqueur, beautiful little green bottle. And most famously of all, there's some bottles of Bass beer, which I think is a really unexpected presence in this very, very French picture. Now, Bass beer was surprisingly popular in Paris after 1870, because in 1870 you had the Franco-Prussian War, and the French took against German beer. So all that German beer that they had previously swallowed was given up, and I think Manet probably deliberately put in this English beer as a kind of retort to the German beer makers whom he was avoiding, because he was, of course, in Paris during the Franco-Prussian War, and he survived their occupation. So it's a picture, I think, loaded with those kinds of slightly secretive meanings. So before I tell you more about it, what do you think about it?
Well, a man of fine taste. English beer, surely the best in the world. Are we supposed to be the client? Is there a bit of Las Meninas going on here? Are we supposed to be the viewer seeing ourselves in the mirror? In which case we have a fine moustache and a lovely top hat.
I think we are in an implied audience for her, but I think more specifically she is talking to the old guy. In other words, that strange reflection behind where you see the barmaid again from behind and you see the old guy with the whiskers, that is actually what is happening in front of the mirror. Now, interestingly, and this has caused any amount of controversy and discussion in art world circles, the reflection's in the wrong place, right? If it was a proper reflection, it would actually be right in front of her. Now, if you think about that, if the old man was being reflected right in front of her because she's very central, you wouldn't be able to see her because he'd be in the way, right? Mm-hmm. So I think what Manet's done is very cleverly shifted the reflection sideways, probably something he did whilst making the picture, realising that otherwise he couldn't see her properly. So that in order to make the picture's meaning complete, which is that she is rather vulnerably talking to this older guy, and it should be said that the barmaids at the Folie Bergère were usually renowned also as having to do work on the side as prostitutes and ladies of the night. And in Manet's art, for example, you see the tangerines, the mandarins on the bar as well. Often the mandarins were a kind of sign of louche behaviour, prostitution. I think it's something to do with the sacred fruit in the Garden of Eden. Or, anyway, for mysterious reasons, Manet liked oranges as a symbol, a kind of token of prostitution. So I think we can be pretty sure that the intention here is to cast her as one of these downtrodden girls who has to try and make a living in bourgeois Paris. The guy with the moustache, he's one of her clients. And by implication, that's us, because Manet's kind of set us right in front of the picture. There's another interesting thing about it, which we know the woman's name, right? Her name was Suzanne. And interestingly, Suzanne's going to be a name that features quite a lot in this list, weirdly. But her name was Suzanne. And I just have this suspicion. This is something that I'm suggesting for the first time. I don't think anybody's ever written a thesis about it. But I wonder
breaking
if
news.
breaking news in the art world. I wonder if Manet, because he reworked old master subjects. That was his big thing. He took old master subjects and made them up to date.
Yeah,
And
he liked Titian and Velasquez, didn't he?
he did Déjeuner sur l'herbe is a version of some water gods sitting by the water. And he reworked Velasquez. He reworked Olympia, of course, by Titian. So I think there's a suggestion here that maybe he's reworking the idea of Suzanne and the Elders. And that Suzanne is kind of Suzanne, young girl, and she's being spied on by these older, bearded, moustached, rich bourgeois figures. Now, I've got no proof for that. It's merely my suggestion. All we know is that she was definitely called Suzanne. So I put that into the mix as a possibility.
Wow, I love that idea. Because that is a famous topic in art. It's just the sort of thing, if he was into reinterpreting the old masters, that's exactly what he'd be going for. I detect a degree of sympathy on the face of Suzanne. We're supposed to see that she's thinking, Christ, not another one. But wasn't he a bit partial to this kind of nefarious activity? I mean, didn't he get various diseases? Or am I slurring him unjustly?
I think you are slurring him. I mean, he had a complex love life. There's stories of him ending up with his piano teacher who's a lot older than him and things. But basically, he wasn't one of those artists who are renowned primarily for rogering their models. That wasn't really him. And he did have quite a moral stance in a lot of his art. And I'd certainly think in this particular instance, he's unquestionably on the side of the poor barmaid rather than the bourgeois audience. So that's my contribution number one to the discussion of drinking in art. These fabulous bottles of Bass, etc., but also this sad story of the barmaid who perhaps is being used.
Well, lovely choice. I like your thesis. Shall I come in with another one now? I've gone for a William Hogarth. And William Hogarth loved to talk about drink. Some years ago on the podcast, we discussed Gin Lane, his famous print about the perils of drinking gin. And he made this rather moralistic print condemning the cheap availability of extremely intoxicating gin on the streets of London. And he wanted to condemn it. But now I'm going to talk about his oil painting of a fellow called Francis Matthew Schutz of Gillingham. This is a small picture which is in Norwich Castle Museum, painted in the later 1750s, and it shows a man lying up in bed. It's just him in the bedroom, and he's throwing up. He's got his kind of what my granny used to call a pot, his chamber pot, and he's holding that and he's looking very sorry for himself. And you can see in quite graphic detail some amount of putrefaction coming out of his mouth. And the great thing about this picture is we know a lot about the circumstances in which it was commissioned, thanks to a label on the back. And it basically, Francis's wife was so fed up with this guy's carousing and drinking and leching that she commissioned her chum Hogarth, who took an equally dim view of this kind of behaviour, to do a picture of him lying in his bed throwing up. And the moral of the story is that you can see beside him is an empty chair. So obviously he's not ill, because if he was ill, someone would be in the chair. His wife would be in the chair tending to him, mopping his fevered brow. But he's not ill. He's all alone because he's been naughty the night before, and he is suffering basically a hangover. And because I'm such a lightweight, this is basically the main reason I don't drink, is because the slightest drop used to give me the most terrible hangover. So I sympathise with Hogarth here and with poor old Mr. Schutz.
I love this story. So the wife commissions a portrait of her husband from Hogarth in which he's shown vomiting into a chamber pot because he's been boozing so much. And also the fact that it was covered up, wasn't it? It was repainted so you couldn't actually see what was really going on for ages, because I think his ancestors didn't like the idea of him being, as it were, traduced by Hogarth in the art. So tell me something. So there's a lyre hanging on the wall behind him, and there's an inscription as well, isn't there? And the inscription says something interesting too. Doesn't it sort of imply that the wife has had this picture painted and is against her husband's drinking, not just because he's vomiting like crazy as a result, but also because it had a big impact on his manhood, his ability to do his husbandly duties? Is that right?
It could have been that too, but I think maybe it was just the lyre is hung up because she's trying to say this is the end of your days where you go out and charm ladies other than me, your dear wife. But yes, you're right. Thanks to the label on the back, we also know that the sitters' descendants didn't fancy the idea of seeing their grandfather throwing up. So they rather implausibly had someone paint in a newspaper. So it looked like he was sort of sitting up in bed reading the newspaper. And that newspaper stayed there till 1990 when they cleaned it and suddenly discovered the chamber pot underneath.
So it was there till 1990. So
Yeah,
that
isn't that
the
amazing?
picture's real meaning was hidden for 300 odd years.
Yeah, they just thought Hogarth had done this eccentric picture of someone reading in the newspaper and looking like he disagreed with what he was reading.
Oh, that is funny. Hogarth liked to joke, didn't he? So that's great. But my next choice is also by an artist who I think liked to joke as well, and that's the great Caravaggio. Because amongst drinking pictures, one of my very favourite examples is the great Bacchus that hangs in the Uffizi Gallery. Caravaggio's Bacchus, where he's standing there, this young man dressed in a flowing white robe. He's got red cheeks. He looks a bit dishevelled. The robe is slipping off his shoulder. He's obviously been having fun a bit, just like Francis Schutz. And in front of him, he's got the glass of wine, red wine that he's been drinking, because he's Bacchus, and Bacchus is the god of wine. That's why he's got all those vine leaves in his hair. So he's been drinking crazily. And what I love about this is if you look really carefully, when you go to the Uffizi, do lean in and stare at this picture as close as they'll let you. You'll see that there are these beautiful ripples in the wine. So it's been painted so clearly, you can see the ripples, which imply immediately that poor old Bacchus's hand is shaking. He can't hold the wine glass still anymore. Now, you don't drink, Bendy, you tell me. You're just like Donald Trump. You avoid the dreaded alcohol. But if you did, you would know that sometimes if you've had too much, this has never happened to me, but I've read about it, right? Sometimes when you've had too much, your hand does indeed kind of shake in the morning. And it is a great sign of having gone too far. So this is clearly what's going on in this picture.
So this is the morning after.
This is the morning after. Well, this is the big theme here, isn't it? I mean, you've had your guy, and this is definitely the morning after, and he's unable to. He's just been drinking too much, basically, and probably has some of the same problems that Francis Schutz had in displaying his manhood, because there's a kind of sense of in this about things sort of flopping and being droopy. And if you look at the fruit in the picture, there's some apples that have gone mouldy, some leaves that are falling off, and there is this. As always with Caravaggio's Bacchuses, there is this sense of a youth that has gone sour and gnarled and turned old. So there's a vanitas meaning, isn't there, to this picture?
Because I think he looks a bit fresh-faced and quite healthy. Am I misreading that then? I think isn't he not saying this is the virtues of drink, just keep on going?
No, I don't think so. Why would the fruit be so speckled and diseased? I don't think so. I think he's playing both games. In one sense, he's celebrating the wild life of Bacchus. And of course, everybody, when they talk about Caravaggio, they immediately think, first of all, that there's a sort of self-portraiture involved in this image, but also that his circle of friends were all these young guys who ran around Rome drinking too much and having fun. So there is that element perhaps in it. But I think that Caravaggio is actually a more moral painter than people like to say these days, and that even in these early pictures, although there is a grinning sense of taking the pee a bit, I think that they are trying to tell us the story of what happens to you if you're young, you go too far, you drink too much, you live too fast. You have to be reminded that your time will only last a short time, and that just as the apples in the basket go sour and turn old, so you will as well. I'm sure that's some of the meaning. So it's a really fabulous picture, I think.
Well, my choice for the next one doubles down on just that idea that this is all terribly bad news for us, this evil drink. And I'm beginning to sound like a fully paid up member of the Temperance Society. And I think joining me in that club would have been the Dutch artist Judith Leyster, because I'm going to mention her picture called The Last Drop, which was painted in 1629, and you can now see it in the Philadelphia Museum of Art in America. And what we see is a fellow on the right dressed finely in red, and he's holding up in one hand a pipe, and he's having a nice time, and in his other hand, his left hand, is an empty flagon of beer, I presume, and he's tipping it upside down so you can see that it's empty. And he's having fun with a friend of his who's sitting on a bar stool, draining the very last drop out of a bottle. And the scene is lit by candlelight. And the extraordinary thing is that the candle in this picture is being held by the figure of death. So we see a skeleton here, and the death figure is having a great time too. You can tell he's smiling. He's also holding up in his hand an hourglass. So time is running out. And this is a classic memento mori. The meaning is obvious. You just have to be careful not to drink too much or smoke too much, because death might take you away at any minute.
Fabulous picture. Absolutely fabulous. I can't say I know it well either. Well, Judith Leyster in general is a difficult figure to know a lot about. She's quite obscure, isn't she? At some point in the future, we're going to be doing a programme about forgotten artists. And then, of course, she was one of those, because people forgot her completely. I mean, she got written out of the story, didn't she?
Yeah.
And her fellow Harlem painter, Frans Hals, was usually credited with most of the pictures that she actually painted. So a lot of the Frans houses became, as it were, covered over the Judith Leyster attribution, which is sad for her.
Yes, in fact, this very picture was called Frans Hals until 1903. So for many hundreds of years, it was assumed to be Frans Hals because Frans Hals was deemed more valuable. It was only when they cleaned the picture that they discovered it's signed JL. And also, this is a bit like the Hogarth we were talking about. Someone had decided that the picture was too graphic, and actually the figure of death had been painted out and replaced with a table on which the candle sat. So this is a picture which has been lost its attribution and lost its meaning until, thank goodness, it was saved by a sharp-eyed conservator.
How exciting. And what a strange and wonderful picture it is. I mean, colorifically, that red outfit the guy's wearing, I mean, that pops out of the picture, doesn't it? It's very exciting. And the blue trousers the other guy has. And this candlelit interior, it's a classic bit of Dutch Caravaggioism, isn't it? I mean, I've just done Caravaggio, and as you know, the influence of later Caravaggio flooded through Europe, and particularly in Holland. It led all sorts of artists to painting stuff at night, candlelit pictures, lots of drama, lots of dark moods. And this is a particularly interesting and inventive example. And, you know, boozy story apart and boozy meanings apart, what it really is as well is just this beautifully inventive example of Dutch Caravaggioism, and I absolutely love it. It's a fantastically interesting picture. And what a brilliant use of a skeleton. They did know how to put skeletons in art in those days, didn't they? It really is a particularly interesting skeleton looming up. In fact, I mean, I don't drink a lot, but were I to drink a lot, I think that the presence of that skeleton might persuade me to lay off the cava a bit, or the Prosecco. I'm going to move on to what, I was tussling over this. I was thinking, what is my very, very favourite drinking picture? And there's so many to choose from. And I've decided to go for, in my case, a picture that really moves me. Now, as you know, we're going to vote on all this. And at the end of all this, and not just me and you, but Taya as well, the producer, we're going to see which, in our opinion, is the best of the drinking pictures and deserves the coveted Waldy and Bendy award. That's going to be happening at the end of the programme. But let me tell you right now, I'm going to vote for this one. And the reason is that it's such a beautiful story. Now, Toulouse-Lautrec to me is an artist who is grossly underrated because he made a lot of posters and they're very famous.
The posters people will have seen are those kind of for bars and French theatres.
Yeah.
This is kind of early 20th century Paris, isn't it?
Late 19th century Paris, yes, indeed. So he's best known for the big posters of the Folies Bergère, above all the Moulin Rouge, with the dancers kicking their feet, dancing the can-can. Interestingly, he was a big Anglophile, so he also did some posters for British Cycles. There's a fantastically funny picture of two cyclists that he made for an English bicycle manufacturing company. But when he wasn't doing posters, he was, first of all, living in brothels a lot, and he had an interesting past that way. But also he was painting these really interesting pictures with a very interesting technique, very fluid paint, painted on cardboard usually, and it made them very free and active and inventive. And he was particularly good, I think, with painting women. He painted some of the women who were in the brothel that he used to frequent, perhaps rather too much, but he also painted his friends and his lovers. Actually, the picture's also called The Hangover. That's our theme today. So hangovers everywhere we look in the drinking pictures. It's called The Hangover. But the model here is a fascinating person, another artist called Suzanne Valadon. Now, have you heard of Suzanne Valadon? Do you know about her?
No, I haven't, no.
Okay, well, Suzanne Valadon started out as an artist's model. She was actually born Marie Clementine Valadon, but it was Toulouse-Lautrec himself who changed her name because of this whole idea of her being an artist model and being ogled by older artists. So she posed for Renoir, she posed for Degas. It was Toulouse-Lautrec who suggested that she should change her name to Suzanne because, again, Susanna and the Elders was this great biblical subject where old men peer at a young woman. So he changed her name to Suzanne and she became Suzanne Valadon. She posed for Toulouse-Lautrec. She became his lover. There was talk of them getting married, but Lautrec broke it off, and she, in 1888, tried to commit suicide. It was a very tragic love affair. I mean, having given her heart to him, she was betrayed, I guess. And some of that sadness, I think, is definitely recorded in this picture. So it's Suzanne Valadon hunched over a bottle of wine, not absinthe in this case, although usually Lautrec painted absinthe. And there's a forlornness, a sadness, a thoughtfulness, a sense in which a glass of wine, a drink, a late night drink, can take you into this other world where you remember lost love and stuff like that. That emotional mood is what I love about this picture.
Well, she looks thoroughly miserable, really, doesn't she?
Yeah, she does look miserable, but also thoughtful, don't you think? Look at her eyes. I mean, she's sad, but she's thinking of stuff. Her thoughts are far away. Perhaps she's thinking of Toulouse-Lautrec, or rather, more importantly, he's thinking of her while he's painting it and endowing it with this deeper mood. Now, remember, this girl had been abused by artists. She'd been painted cheaply as a model. He's the one, and he was genuine French aristocracy, as you know. Had he outlived his father, he would have become the Comte de Toulouse-Lautrec. He was a genuine aristocrat, and he had this sympathy, though, because of his own disabilities, the fact that he had these short legs that never grew because of inbreeding in his family. He was a great painter of tenderness, and he responded to other people's tenderness, and I think their love affair was a genuine thing, and some of its fondness, its tenderness, is recorded here. Now, the other thing about Lautrec is he's notorious because he was also very loose. He was a bit like you. You know, he had a reputation as someone who didn't know where to stop. And did you know that he actually wrote a cookery book? There is a cookery book written by Toulouse-Lautrec. Have you come across that?
No. Was he the Keith Floyd of his time? I know he liked to drink. Didn't he wander around with a hollow walking stick that he had absinthe in, or wine or something?
He did a hollow walking stick filled with absinthe. And he invented a famous cocktail, which is in fact in this cookery book that he wrote. He's the only artist I know who's actually written a cookbook. In the cookbook, there's a famous cocktail which he called the Earthquake. Have you heard of the Earthquake?
No.
The Earthquake was made of, I've got the recipe in front of me, 3 parts absinthe, 3 parts cognac, and a splash of red wine. So it was basically half a glass of absinthe, half a glass of cognac, and a splash of red wine. So it was called an earthquake because if you drank one of these and there was an earthquake happening, you didn't feel it. You weren't aware of the earthquake at all.
That would literally kill me.
It would kill anybody, wouldn't it? It didn't kill him, and of course alcoholism in the end, it actually is what killed him, and he had a rather tragic death. But this is a good moment in his life. This is a moment when I think his heart still feels this love for Suzanne Valadon, who went on to become a painter herself. She was the mother of Maurice Utrillo. She had a great kind of later life. But in her early days, he was, I think, the guy that maybe treated her best, and there's that sadness and beauty in this picture. So, I love it. I love Toulouse-Lautrec. I always want to stand in his corner and fight his corner. So I think it's the best of them, and I'm going to give it 5 out of 5. Let me tell you right now, I don't know what scores you're going to give it. We'll find out right at the very end when Taya reveals who's won the Waldy and Bendy award for the best drinking picture. Frankly, Bendy, though, talking this much about drinking, it's tired me out. I think we need a bit of a break, don't you?
Yeah, I'm going to have a cup of tea.
Waldy and Bendy.
Did you enjoy your cup of tea, Bendy? That was nice, wasn't it?
Lovely, with a biscuit.
Oh, a biscuit. I could have done with a bit of a biscuit. Feeling a bit tired after all that talk of drink. But we're moving on to the next section of the pod, which is the part where we look at great pictures that you and I great artworks we want to hang on the wall because we love them so much we wish they were ours. And if we had bottomless amounts of money, and I know you do but I don't, or let's say we both did, if we had bottomless amounts of money we could get anything we wanted, this is the section where we decide what we would have in our house to look at forever.
On the wall.
So, yes, Bendy, it's on the wall, and I've chosen something interesting, really, really interesting. It's actually not a painting, it's a sculpture, so it should really be on the plinth, shouldn't it, or in the niche. But let's say that we could just about have it on the wall, and it's a sculpture by Michelangelo. It's called The Risen Christ. It's on display in the Church of Santa Maria sopra Minerva in Rome. And it was made by Michelangelo roughly between 1514 and 1521. He had some travails trying to make it. There was a few problems, so it took a while. And it shows the risen Christ coming out of the tomb in which he'd been buried after his crucifixion. He's just about to rise up again, I think. It's a very, very interesting moment in the story of Christ. But as a sculpture, it's been much mocked. And lots of people have said terrible things about it. I think in her book on Michelangelo, Linda Murray, the art historian Linda Murray, I mean, she said it probably is his only total failure as a sculpture. Lots of people have been rude about it.
I'm astonished to hear that. How anybody could say anything unkind about a Michelangelo statue.
I know, Linda Murray did. And she's not alone. There's another quote about it that I read the other day is that the fingers are really bad and they look as if they've been made not out of marble, but made out of pasta. So fingers made out of pasta, that's rude as well. It's a strange thing. But it is a much misunderstood image. That's why I wanted to talk about it. And the reason it's been misunderstood, I think, is to a certain degree because of the way you see it now. So, I don't know, have you got a picture of it in front of you now, or do you know it well already, Bendy?
No, I'm looking at some lovely photographs of it.
The picture you're probably looking at will have Christ standing there, he's holding a cross in front of him. It's a miniature cross, of course, it's not a real cross. The real cross would have been much bigger, but this is a cross as an emblem of his passion, the pain that he went through during his crucifixion. Mm-hmm. But around his loin, you'll probably see, because in most photographs you see it, a kind of metal bronze swathe of cloth, a little kind of loincloth that's been very delicately stuck in front of his body, so you don't see what's behind it. So basically they've eradicated or redacted his genitalia. Can you see that?
Yeah, and in some of the photos I can see here, actually the loincloth was at one point even bigger. It looks like he had a sort of sleeping bag wrapped around his waist.
Yes. He did. And see, the reason I wanted to talk about this is the first time I saw this sculpture, right? I went on a school trip when I was very early on, when I was interested in history of art. And I went to the Church of Santa Maria sopra Minerva. We actually went to see the Bernini outside. I don't know if you remember, there's a fantastic Bernini sculpture of the obelisk, the Egyptian obelisk, stuck on the back of a giant elephant. That's outside the church. But anyway, inside, it's got this great Michelangelo. And when I saw it for the first time, right, the bronze loincloth wasn't there. So it was a completely naked Jesus with everything showing, which is right. That's what he should be, of course. And later only did I discover that this was because we're still living through the sort of period of liberal popes. So Pope John the 23rd's influence was still paramount in the Vatican, and the Catholic Church was still going through a relatively liberal period. So the loincloth was off. Well, since then, the last few times I've been, it's been back on again and covering Jesus up. And this is a really interesting and important theological point, really, because in the Bible itself, what happens after his death is that he's for 3 days he's dead. On the third day, it's the Easter moment. On the third day, he rises from the dead, doesn't he? And St. Peter goes into the tomb. They roll away the stone and the tomb where Jesus is, and he finds the linen cloth in which the naked body of Christ had been wrapped, lying there. So he knows that Jesus has left, and we know that the cloth has been left behind. In other words, Jesus should be naked.
Yeah, because that's where you get all the legends of the things like the Turin Shroud. That was what he was buried in after he died.
Yes.
Or didn't die, sorry.
Yes. So the Turin Shroud is always meant to be the cloth that was left behind when he died. In fact, the reason we know that the Turin Shroud is 100% a fake, has to be a fake, is because the Jesus who appears in that image is the medieval Jesus. So that is to say, the bearded, long-haired medieval Jesus, rather than the Jesus you see in the earliest Christian art. Because in the earliest Christian art, Jesus is blonde, curly-haired, young. He's taken on the identity of Apollo. So the first few hundred years of Christianity, we had a completely different Jesus to look at. Then these myths came along, the myth of Veronica's veil, that she rubbed her face in him on the way to Calvary and his image was left behind on the cloth. And of course the Turin Shroud itself turned up. And it's been, I think, fairly conclusively proved to be a fake since then. But of course the Catholic Church has not, cannot, and probably never will admit that. But anyway, that's neither here nor there in this case. So the Turin Shroud does indeed represent that linen cloth. The important thing is, if the linen cloth was left behind, then Jesus should be naked. And that's what Michelangelo has sculpted, a completely naked Jesus. And only later generations have come back and covered it up, which I think is sad, don't you? I mean, it's completely misreading the intentions of the artist.
Yeah, and the thing I find extraordinary about it is that Michelangelo is trying to fuse the two things that he was preoccupied with. I mean, there are all those wonderful drawings, and some sculptures too, of the crucified Christ, and Michelangelo seems to have always been pursuing that moment of extraordinary, profound vulnerability when the deity is killed by man and then suddenly comes back to life. So he's looking for that particular moment. That is the most profound creative divine moment there is, really, isn't it? But he's also, of course, been so interested in heroic classical sculpture. So he's doing Christ not only risen and naked, but looking like some sort of Apollo Greek god, basically. So it's the fusion of those two things that he was preoccupied with.
He's a muscular Christ, yeah. The other important thing, originally it was made to be shown in a niche. So for the first few hundred years after it was made, it was shown in a niche. So you'd only get that front view of it. People have sometimes complained about the back of it. They say Christ has got a big bum, stuff like that. But it wasn't meant to be viewed from behind. It was always meant to be viewed from this specific angle from the front. And so also slightly higher up. So this is this moment, what we have here is exactly this moment when Christ is about to ascend back to heaven. I mean, there is actually a sort of cloth at the back of it that is the remains of the linen cloth. So it's this pregnant moment. He's at the edge. If you look at his feet as well, he's at the edge of the niche. He's about to ascend. It's a piece of wonderful drama. And like you, I just cannot believe that people have been so rude about it in the past and have tended to underrate it. Because actually, if you look at it from the right angle and you feel it in the right way, it's a very active, twirling and typical piece of Michelangelo adventure, sculptural adventure. So I love it. And every time I'm in Rome, I will go and search it out and see it. And so I put it on the wall section, really, not just because I want to have it in my house, but also because I want to save it from some of the rude things that have been said about it.
Yeah, well, if the sniffy art historians are so rude about it and the church wants to cover it up, then they should let you have it, Weld, I think. But you mentioned at the beginning some of the travails that Michelangelo had when he made this. And I love the story of his first version, which when he started, there are two versions of this statue by Michelangelo. And his first one he had to abandon when it was more or less kind of, 90% finished? Because when he got to the finer parts of Christ's face, he found that the block of marble, which he'd been carving so beautifully, had this massive black vein running through between the nose and the cheek. And obviously you couldn't have that in the perfect divine figure of Christ, so he had to abandon the whole thing and start all over again. And thank goodness we know what this first version looked like, because it was lost for centuries until, this is the most amazing discovery, I think, an art historian called Silvia Scorzina found it in a church in Viterbo. And what had happened is that this first version had been abandoned, but someone later on decided to just finish it off. So some parts of it have been finished, but you can clearly see the black vein through Christ's face, which makes it, I think, an extraordinary, powerful, slightly flawed figure. And who are we to point to flaws in Christ? But I think as a combination of Michelangelo's flaws, the flaws in nature, and the biblical Christ that we know, I think it's the most extraordinary thing. So I haven't seen the one in the church in Rome. I must do that. And I'm also going to go and see the one in Viterbo.
Well, a few years ago, you wouldn't have needed to do that because the National Gallery in London put them both on show together. Or rather, they put on the one that's been rediscovered, the Viterbo picture, and a plaster cast of the original Michelangelo, without the bronze loincloth, by the way. And you could see the difference. It was fascinating because actually the second version is slightly better, I think. And the reason it's slightly better is there's more movement in it. So Christ's hand moves across the cross. There's a contrapposto in the figure. The knee sticks out more. It's slightly more active, and there's perhaps a more tangible sense of Christ about to rise up to heaven. My final point on the nudity, which is the significant thing here. Christ came down to earth to save us. That's what the whole gospel's about, what the whole New Testament is about. To save us, he had to become fully human, right? So he had to be fully human when he came back to earth as well later on, when he returns for the second coming. And this idea of a full humanity is what I think Michelangelo is trying to get at here. So when the end of the world comes, when Christ returns at this famous second coming of his, and we're all judged again, Bendor, you and me, and Taya, poor old Taya, we'll all be lined up and given the thumbs up or the thumbs down. We either go to heaven or we go to hell. A fully human Christ, as it were, will be doing the judging. So this isn't just a sculpture about Jesus and the resurrection. It's also a sculpture about what Jesus had to be to save us, to give us a future, and that is to be fully human. And I'm sure Michelangelo had that as his ambition. So it's a work that I think deserves lots of looking at again and lots of appreciation. So yes, Michelangelo and Christ, my on the wall.
Yeah. Do you know what, Wald? Perhaps I shouldn't do this. Perhaps we shouldn't put this in. But I've got a Michelangelo Christ. Shall I show it to you?
Oh dear me, go on then. You've got
Yeah.
a Michelangelo Christ. It's of course I want to see it.
Yeah. 1 second. I'll just take my headphones off and go and get it.
So listeners, in case you can't see this and you're not watching us on the ZTZ YouTube channel, where we have got the video version of all this, so you can actually see events happening in real life, in case you're not watching, Bendy has just taken off his headphones and he's left the room. Bendy has left the room, and we're all sitting here drumming our fingers on the desk, waiting for him to come back. Oh, and there's an opening of a door. Bendy has reappeared. He's putting his headphones back on. And in his hand, he is now waving at us a little sculpture. And
It's a crucifix. I'm going to hold it up to the camera. Can you see it?
It's a crucifix indeed. Oh, go on then. Tell me it's a Michelangelo crucifix and you've discovered it's one of your sleepers. Go on, tell me the truth.
Well, no, I don't know what it is really, but we do know that Michelangelo, towards the end of his life, was working on these multiple iterations of the crucified Christ, both in drawing and sculpture, and that he made a lost original cast, which somehow made its way to Spain towards the end of the 16th century, and it was replicated many, many times in silver and bronze and painted bronze. You used to get painted kind of polychrome examples of it. And this is an example that came up at auction recently, and it's made of lead. So it's one of the kind of cheaper versions of it, but it is an early version. So it's, when I say it's a Michelangelo, it's a cast of a cast of a cast, probably. But I still think it gets you close to the man. I think it's exceptional.
Can you hold that even closer to the camera? This is, sorry, pod people, but if you're looking at the ZTZ channel and seeing this actually properly on your tellies now, you'll see Bendy's Christ more clearly, and it's poignant. It's really, really lovely, and I must admit, I'd like to have one of those too, Bendor. That's wonderful. Lucky you.
But that's going back to what we were saying about the art market. This was not expensive, and this kind of thing you can just is available for us to acquire like that. Isn't that amazing?
Oh, that is amazing. So nothing better than a good auction, I must say. Unfortunately, on that bombshell that you've got this Michelangelo Christ, I think we have to come to the end of all this. We've got one thing left to do, which is we're going to tot up all the figures. Going to go back to drink here to see which is the best of the boozing pictures. And here's a quick reminder of what they are. So there's the Toulouse-Lautrec, there's the Manet, there's the Judith Leister, and there's the Caravaggio and the Hogarth. So they're all up on the screen now, I think, if you're watching on the ZTZ channel rather than listening on the podcast. And we're going to vote for them. So Taya, you've done all the calculations, I think. take us through it, put us out of our misery. Who has won the Waldy and Bendy Award for the best booze picture?
Well, I'm going to keep you in your misery a little bit longer by starting with the lowest vote, which was Caravaggio, with 4 points. And in fourth place, we have Hogarth, Francis Schutz in bed. In third place, it is the Judith Leyster. In second place, it is the Manet. And number one leaves then the Lautrec.
So I've swung it. So I'm sure you helped me with that there, Taya. That's wonderful. Yes, Toulouse-Lautrec and his poignant picture of Suzanne Valadon and The Hangover is officially the winner of the Waldy and Bendy Award for the best booze picture. Oh, I'm so happy about that. Toulouse-Lautrec is the winner. Don't forget, everybody, if you want to see these pictures as well as hear about them, do go to the ZCZ channel on YouTube, where you'll be able to see us in action and all the art that we're talking about. So on that lovely note, it's goodbye from me, and can't wait for the next podcast. See you till then.
And goodbye from me with my regular entreaty, of course, to please like us and rate us and share us on your favourite podcasting platform. And we'll see you again next week.
Waldy and Bendy.